This one there, we got every word. Is Antonio's there? We're
Yep.
gonna make-
I'd like to call the conference committee for Senate Bill 662 and House Bill 714 to order. And if we could, we'll begin on the Senate side. I'm going to have my lovely assistant. And by the way, I would not have hired any of y'all as funeral directors because we try to start 11 o'clock funerals at 11 o'clock, not 11:15. But I'm going to have my lovely assistant, Lenekra, call the Senate roll.
Senator Taylor,
Present.
Chairman White,
Present.
Senator Powers,
Here.
Senator Agberry,
Present.
Senator Lowe.
Here.
Senator Taylor, you have all members present.
Thank you. And if we could have the House Clerk call the House roll.
Representative Sapicki. Representative Moody.
Here.
Representative Parkinson.
Here.
Representative Slater.
Here.
Representative White.
Here.
Chairman, that's all members present. You have a quorum.
All right, great. We have a quorum, both House and Senate. I believe Chairman White and I prepared a committee agenda. I think it should have been passed out to everyone. If not, the next item on the agenda is overview of the Senate version of the draft conference report. And Casey Washburn is here. Where's Casey? Oh, there you are. Casey, if you could just as a way to begin, give us an overview of the draft Senate conference report, and then if you could also discuss any differences with a House version, and then at some point we'll want to call up Department of Education for questions. But if you could begin, Ms. Washburn.
Casey Washburn, Office of Legal Services. The proposed compromise prepared by the Senate members would establish an educational oversight board for an LEA that meets 4 or more of the following 6 criteria. The LEA's proficiency rate in mathematics and in English language arts on the most recently administered TCAP test reflects that 50% or more of students enrolled in the LEA are not proficient in both subjects. 25% or more of the schools managed and controlled by the LEA's board were assigned a D or F letter grade in the most recent school year. 25% or more of the students enrolled in the LEA were chronically absent in the most recent school year. At least one school managed and controlled by the LEA's board was identified as a priority school or has maintained a priority school designation for each of the 5 immediately preceding years. The Commissioner of Education makes a determination that the findings of an audit conducted, initiated, or directed by the Comptroller of the LEA shows deficiencies in the management, accounting, or internal controls of the LEA or instances of fraud, waste, abuse, or financial mismanagement, including the mismanagement of financial records, and the Commissioner determines that the local Board of Education has employed more than 2 directors of schools on an interim basis for during the immediately preceding 4 years. If an LEA meets the required criteria, the Commissioner will notify the local board as well as the governor and the respective speakers that an oversight board must be established, and that board must be in place no later than July 1st. An oversight board will consist of 9 members, each of whom must reside within the county in which the LEA is located. 5 members appointed by the governor, 2 members appointed by the Speaker of the House, and 2 members appointed by the Speaker of the Senate. The House Finance, Ways, and Means Committee amendment established that the Oversight Board would operate in the LEA for 3 years and could be extended for 3 years. The proposed compromise in the Senate's version would establish the Oversight Board to operate within the LEA for 4 years. And at the end of that 4-year period, if the LEA continues to meet 4 of the 6 criteria, the Oversight Board in existence at that time would be vacated and 9 new members would be appointed to serve as the Oversight Board for an additional 2 years. The Senate's version adds provisions to allow the Oversight Board to appoint an executive committee or a subcommittee that can act on behalf of the Oversight Board and allow for meetings of the Oversight Board, including its executive or subcommittee, to be held electronically. The Senate's version adds language to allow the Oversight Board to hire up to 3 staff members to assist the board or to reassign members of the LEA's central office to assist the board as needed. The Oversight Board is required to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment on a number of factors, including the number and qualifications of teachers in the district, the average and maximum class sizes in the district, the quality of the textbooks and instructional materials used in the district schools, the parental involvement strategies used in the district and their effectiveness, the mentoring and professional development opportunities available in the district for newly licensed and experienced teachers, an analysis of the student population served by the district and any issues related to student, teacher, and school safety, a review of the financial statements and accounting practices in the district, a review of the facility and maintenance needs for the district, and a review of all employment contracts, grant opportunities, and any other information the board deems relevant to the identifying areas of insufficient performance or mismanagement for the LEA. Based on the findings of the comprehensive needs assessment, the Oversight Board will develop a transformation plan that must be reviewed annually. If an Oversight Board is allowed to perform a duty or take an action authorized in the Act before the completion of any comprehensive needs assessment or transformation plan is developed or put into place. And if one or more members of the Oversight Board suspects that a member of the local board's a member of the local Board of Education, the Director of Schools, or any other administrator, employer, contractor of the LEA has committed an act or omission that could constitute a state or federal offense, then that must be reported to the appropriate law enforcement agency, the District Attorney General, the United States Attorney if applicable, and to the Comptroller if the act or omission involves the use of public funds. And the Oversight Board is required to submit an annual progress report to the speakers, the governor, the commissioner of education, and the local legislative body for the city or county. The local Board of Education is required to, let me step back. The House Finance Ways and Means Committee amendment established various requirements for LEAs, local boards that have an oversight board appointed, specifically requiring that the local board submit any contracts valued over $50,000 and any purchases or expenditures of over $50,000 be submitted to the Oversight Board for approval before they may be entered into, that the local board submit its proposed budget and any proposed budget amendments to the Oversight Board for approval before it can be submitted to the local legislative body for approval, and for the approval of any comprehensive listing of property that's required to be reported to the department and the comptroller for use by charter schools that may be operating in the district. That list must be also submitted to the Oversight Board before it can be implemented or provided to the department by the local board, and before the local Board of Education may deny any amended application to open a new public charter school, an application to convert a public charter school, or an application to renew the charter agreement of an existing public charter school. Before that denial decision can be reached, it has to be submitted to the Oversight Board for approval. Those provisions are all retained in the proposed Senate version of the conference report. New language is added into that was not contained within the House amendment or the Senate amendment from last year to allow the Oversight Board to direct an action within the local Board of Education's authority or prohibit the local board from taking an action within its authority if it deems the action or inaction necessary to improve the LEA's performance, operation, or management. And it may do so as well for the Director of Schools, direct an action or prohibit the director from taking an action within their authority if they deem it's necessary. The Oversight Board is allowed to terminate with or without cause the employment of any LEA employee, including the Director of Schools, regardless of whether the employee is employed at will or under a contract of employment. There is a provision to say that the Oversight Board cannot terminate the employment of a contracted employee in a manner that would violate the terms of the contract, but that the board could exercise the rights of the LEA or the local Board of Education to terminate the employment of a contract and terminate the employment of an employee under that contract with or without cause. An Oversight Board is also allowed to terminate, again, with or without cause, but termination for cause will be deemed to exist if the Oversight Board terminates an employee for failing or refusing to comply with the directive of the Oversight Board, causing or contributing to one or more of the deficiencies in the management, accounting, or internal controls of the LEA, or is found by the Oversight Board to have been negligent or derelict in the performance of their duties, such that the board could reasonably conclude that the employee's actions may have contributed to the LEA meeting the criteria required for the appointment of an oversight board. Finally, there's provisions to say that if an employee is employed under a contract and is terminated for cause, they forfeit any compensation due under the terms of that contract to the extent that the contract allows for that. And the oversight board will take the action, is required to select an employee on behalf of the LEA, an individual to fill any position that's vacated due to the termination of an employee by the oversight board, including the director of schools, unless the oversight board determines that the position is redundant or unnecessary for the efficient operation of the LEA. Finally, there's created a special account in the state treasury to provide funding for oversight boards upon application to the department and for good cause shown to assist the oversight boards in the performance of their duties under this act. And the local board, and there's language to say that added to direct that the local board of education is not authorized to assert a cause of action against the oversight board for the oversight board taking an action pursuant to or in accordance with its duties and authority established in this act.
All right, thank you, Ms. Washburn, and I failed to take us out of session, so consider everything she said was out of session. While we're out of session, if we could have the Department of Education come forward. Is anybody from the Department of Education? Yes, come forward. All right, if we could, I'll let any one of y'all begin, but I would like for you to just give us an overview of the performance measures that are contained in the report. And if you would, any of y'all can start, just begin by giving your name and who you represent. And I'll let, yes, sir. I see your red light on. I'll let you go first.
Jonathan Criswell, Chief Program Officer at the department.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to share today. Going through the metrics, I will just share the data that we have collected, that we've reported to the committee. On the first note of 50% or more students enrolled in the LEA did not meet grade level expectations, 80% of our districts would be eligible for that metric, that one and that one alone. For the second one, 25% or more of the schools managed or controlled by the LEA local board of education were assigned a D or a F. That would be about 50 LEAs or about 34% with that metric alone. Number three, the 25% or more students enrolled in an LEA were chronically absent. That's about 11%, or excuse me, 11 schools or about 11 LEAs or about 7% would be eligible for that criteria alone. The last one, number four, would be at least one school manager controlled by an LEA local board of education has been identified as a priority school for a consistent amount of time. That would be 2 LEAs would be eligible for that metric and that metric alone. Altogether, there are 7 LEAs that hit 3 of the 4 performance metrics. So 7 would hit 3 of the 4 performance metrics. Happy to answer any other questions.
All right. Would any of your colleagues care to say anything, or are you going to be the spokesperson for the trio?
It depends upon the depth of the question that you ask.
Well, all right. Sounds good. Are there any questions of our panelists? Chairman White. I'm sorry, Chairman, fabulous Chairman Don White.
You have to distinguish between the other chairs, right? How are you? Okay, so, 4 out of 6, we're definitely taking them over. If there's, you said 7 or 3 out of the 6, how are you notifying them? Are you working with them? What is the DOE's plan out of these 7 LEAs that's got 3 out of the 6?
So, Chairman, let me be clear. It's 7 meet 3 of the 4 performance metrics. So I'm not speaking to the other 2 that would be the audit findings or the turnover of an interim superintendent. So I'm only speaking to those first 4 performance metrics. So the department has a robust system for school improvement that includes district plans, that includes school plans. And then if you meet the certain qualifications for the school turnaround intervention system, obviously that's a little more in depth. That requires you meeting with our turnaround interventionist on a monthly basis, which looks at data, which looks at curriculum. It's a little bit more in depth than just your normal school improvement plan, district turnaround plan.
Are you currently working with these districts? What does it look like from a DOE? And are you going to, because I mean, a takeover is a big deal. I mean, you know, if they go and have one more of these metrics. So are you going to give them extra, you know, something to help them not be taken over, I guess is a question I have.
That's what the school turnaround intervention system, the levels are designed to do. So a level 1 would put you at this level of intervention. It requires a certain plan. It requires a comprehensive school analysis. And then our school turnaround internal people from the department work with the leadership of that district to ensure that there are certain metrics, there are certain characteristics that are of leadership that are happening of what we know is good practice within a school district, within an LEA. Of course, level 2, obviously, there's federal money that becomes involved that allows you to hire an external school turnaround vendor. And that school turnaround vendor allows them to come in and work directly with the school and with the LEA to be able to partner to do a little bit more in depth, a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more daily, weekly activity than what the department is able to provide or does provide in that level 2 or tier 2 system. Tier 3 obviously has some major consequences of school restructuring, school closure, if we ever got to a tier 3 of the school turnaround model.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How long do you work with districts on this turnaround?
So the school turnaround continues until they come off of the list, identified list of the priority list.
You're recognized.
So what is the longest you've had to work with a district?
State your name. For the
Yes,
record.
sir. Sam Piercy, Deputy Commissioner of Operations at the department. Ma'am, we have been working with districts since the identifications under No Child Left Behind. So for some of those districts, they could have been on the list for years upon years. I don't have the exact number of years on me, but I'm happy to get that for the committee.
Does that conclude your question? All
Thank
right,
you, Mr. Chairman.
I have next Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly thank you all for your presentation. So my question, I want to kind of tap a little bit more into the school turnaround model. How long has your current school turnaround model been in place with the different tiers?
That school turnaround model has just passed legislation this year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So has any LEA been able to fully recognize that turnaround process yet?
No, ma'am. There are still schools that have, I won't give you a date, but they still have some time to be able to implement that fully. Some school districts and LEAs have taken advantage of that early and begun the implementation process a little quicker than others. But no one has fully implemented that and been able to notify the results or seen the results of that school turnaround yet.
Thank you.
Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So of the 7 LEAs that would hit 3 of the 4 performance metrics, are any of those currently in your school turnaround model?
Yes.
Senator Agberry.
So they're in a turnaround model already that was recently created. We have not had an opportunity to see, the fruit of that labor, whether or not that turnaround will work, but they are currently under an intervention. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, have next Chairman Mark White.
Thank you. And my question, the conversation, make sure we have clarity. In the Commerce Committee report we have, this specifically says 4 of the 6 in this particular one. We were talking about 3 of 4. But this bill is 406, so there's really only one district at this point. Is that correct, that this committee, this conference report applies to?
That's correct. There's only one LEA that would meet that criteria for the performance metrics. Yes, sir.
Just thinking here, and also back to the senator's question, one reason that we have these turnaround models you're talking about, but yet they don't seem to come off. What do you think the issue is why they do not come off? Can you answer that?
There's obviously a wide array of reasons that schools do not experience success. To pinpoint one or two, obviously, I think you would need to be in that district to be able to have that conversation to see the workings that are going on there. There have been numerous models that have been tried that have tried to turn around schools and school districts that have been ineffective in increasing student achievement. So Chairman White, I don't know that I can give you a specific answer to that.
Okay, but I just want to make clarity, committee, that this report before us is a district that has met 4 of 6 at this point in time.
All right, thank you, Representative White. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here also. What are the 7 districts that meet 3 of the 4 performance criteria?
If you would give us one moment to make sure that we have that
Sure.
correct. So that would be Campbell County, Cocke County, Lewis, Madison, Shelby, the Tennessee Public Charter Commission, or schools, and the ASD.
Can I continue?
Yes, sir.
So the state's own school district meets that criteria?
The ASD
The
would
ASD.
be with that 7.
Yes, sir. And one more time, so because, so everybody can write this down. I got Campbell, Cocke, Lewis, Madison,
Memphis, Shelby.
Memphis,
The ASD and the Public Charter Commission.
ASD, both of the state school districts, the ASD and the Charter Commission. Okay. Now, when you spoke about it, are there more, or am I?
That's the
Okay,
7.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you, sir. When you spoke about districts that are involved that have turnaround under the new turnaround policy that was just implemented early, you said earlier this year, correct?
Correct.
Right. That intervention is school specific, am I correct? But not LEA overall. Am I correct or
Correct.
incorrect in that assessment? I'm sorry.
Correct.
So the intervention focuses on the problem, the specific problem that a district may be having versus the district overall, correct?
The district works with the school to create and implement that plan. The plan specifically is addressed to the school.
Okay, thank you, sir. And how did we get, and maybe this is a question for the sponsors. How did we decide whether it's going to be 4 of the criteria met versus 3 that actually identifies more schools, or even 2 that would identify even more schools? How did we get to that? Was that in consultation with the department?
It was not.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to the sponsors on that question if you don't. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Parkinson, are there any other questions of our panel? All right, seeing none, thank you, gentlemen, for being here and your answers. If you could, don't wander off too far in case other questions come up. All right, are there any questions of Ms. Washburn with legal? Representative Parkinson, did you have a question for Ms. Washburn?
I got a whole slew of them. so I don't know where you want me to, and, I just want to be quiet. Let's go, okay. Do you mind?
No, you're recognized.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Okay, here we go. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. In looking at the legislation, we've already identified, those other school districts that meet some of this criteria. But this is for the sponsor. Let me come back to that, if you don't mind. Sorry about that. Okay, here, I do want to ask this to legal. Is it correct that the oversight board under this legislation or proposed legislation can veto budgets and budget amendments that the board proposes?
Casey Washburn, Legal Services. That's correct. Before the local board can submit its proposed budget or any budget amendment to the local legislative body for adoption, it would have to be submitted to the oversight board first, and the oversight board could veto the entirety of that budget or only portions of that budget or budget amendment and return it back to the Board of Education. The school board at that time would make any necessary revisions, resubmit it to the oversight board. And then if, depending on whether they've reached an agreement, if the oversight board approves of the revisions, then that can then be submitted to the local legislative body.
Can I continue?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Perkins.
And this is more of a procedural question for legal. Do all school districts have to provide an annual audit to the state that has to be approved by the state each year, or how does that work?
With respect to audits, there's a number of potential audits that may take place within a district and that the department may work with individual districts and schools on various issues. The specific audit that's referenced in the proposed conference committee report is an audit that was conducted, initiated, or directed by the Comptroller of the Treasury for an LEA. So that's a specific audit. And then the specific findings that would warrant the commissioner making a determination to have an oversight board appointed would be that audit shows deficiencies in the management, auditing, or internal controls of the LEA, or has shown all instances of fraud, waste, abuse, or financial mismanagement, including a mismanagement of financial records.
Thank you for that. And so those annual audits that are submitted to the state, to the comptroller's office by each LEA, because that does happen. Am I correct or incorrect? Because I think it's important for us to understand that if or if not, an LEA is to submit an annual audit to the comptroller and to the state of Tennessee.
There could be audits that are submitted of their financial accounts and things for the year to the comptroller. I think this is an audit that the comptroller has taken the action on its own behalf to initiate, conduct, or direct. So this would be something that the comptroller has taken an initiative to do a specific type of examination of the district.
Okay, and if an LEA has submitted an audit in there as their annual audit, and that audit has come back, the audit was not clean, that would not qualify them under this criteria?
If there's issues with an audit and the comptroller is working with that district, and even if the comptroller initiates another audit of that district that makes these findings, in order to have an oversight board appointed, the commissioner of education would have to have reviewed the findings of any type of audit and found that audit shows deficiencies in certain management controls and accounting of the district to warrant the appointment of an oversight board. So it would still require a determination by the commissioner of education that an oversight board should be appointed.
And I just want to be clear on that, Ms. Chair. So I'm clear. When every LEA, from what I understand, and you correct me if I'm wrong, every LEA in our state has to provide an audit annually to the Department of Education and the comptroller. annually. And if that audit does not come back clean annually or once, then that would qualify them under these provisions in this legislation.
If there's an audit of the district, that doesn't just by default result in the appointment of an oversight board. It would have to be a particular audit of the district by the comptroller, and then depending on the findings of that audit, the Commissioner of Education would take into consideration what are the findings of that audit, and do those findings warrant the appointment of the oversight board because they show deficiencies in the management accounting. So it would be a judgment decision based on the comptroller's decision whether or not to initiate a subsequent and more robust audit of the district as a whole, and then whether the commissioner determines based on the results of that audit that the findings warrant the appointment of an oversight board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I could, this may help, Representative. The conference report reads, I'm on page 2. Page 2, which paragraph 5. The Commissioner of Education determines that the findings of an audit conducted, initiated, or directed by the Comptroller of the Treasury for the LEA shows deficiencies in the management, accounting, and internal controls of LEA or instances of fraud, waste, and abuse or financial management, including but not limited to the mismanagement of financial records. I think that speaks to a different audit than just their annual compliance audit that they are required to do annually.
Can I respond to you?
Well, if you agree with me, you can respond. If you're going to disagree, I won't recognize. But go ahead.
Well, I neither disagree nor agree. I think this may be an area that, we may need to review. I think this may be an area that we may need to review because from my understanding, there have been annual audits that have not been clean audits from some districts. And that in itself should be a red flag. Don't you agree? If we're just talking about possible fraud, waste, abuse of financial management issues. Do you agree or disagree? Just so you can answer if you agree with me.
Well, I will say this. I think that would be one criteria. And again, they have to meet 3 other criteria in order to be a candidate for intervention. So, yeah.
So you agree.
Representative Sapicki.
I would like, if we could possibly have the comptroller come up and gain some clarity on what happens in the audit process on a yearly basis.
Sure. That'll teach him to walk into the committee room. If we could, Comptroller Mumpower, if you could come forward, and we're out of session, and you can just state your name. I will do the best I can to clarify the question that Representative Parkinson was asking. If you could speak to the difference between the annual audit that the LEA has to submit to the Comptroller's office versus the Comptroller directing an audit as outlined in the conference report.
Thank you very much. Jason Mumpower, Comptroller of the Treasury. For every municipality, large counties, the way they are audited every year is through a contract audit performed by an independent CPA firm. That local government puts out a bid process, the CPA firm's bid, and ultimately that CPA firm is selected by the local government. It is a 3-party contract. The Comptroller's office reviews that contract and then signs on to it. When the audit is produced, it is reported to the Comptroller's office. In the case of the Memphis-Shelby County School Systems, Watkins Uberall has been selected for a number of years and has performed a financial and compliance audit, which is a very different type of audit than a forensic audit. So I hope I have answered that part of the question. you'll have to give me, if you will, just a little more context as to what you have in the conference report for the type audit that there will be in the future.
Yeah, if I could, the audit or the conference report references a audit that is conducted, initiated, or directed by the Comptroller or the Treasurer for the LEA show deficiencies in the management, accounting, internal controls of LEA or instances of fraud, waste, and abuse or financial mismanagement. And I think you answered the question.
Well, certainly the forensic audit, which we contracted and initiated, that's taken place, that's still underway. As a matter of fact, it would be an understatement to say that it showed a deficiency in management. I mean, it's the worst audit we've ever seen in the career of my 45-year director of audit. He said it's the worst audit he's ever seen from a local government perspective. So certainly, I think it meets that standard.
But I think what Representative Parkinson was getting to is the difference between that audit and then the annual compliance audit that a local firm would do. Certainly, the local firm would not be able to find the level of mismanagement that was identified in the forensic audit.
So, yeah, again, a very different type of product. That type of review is not what was even contracted for. However, I will tell you that we have been concerned about whether or not the local firm performed enough work over these past few audits, and I think you will see a different level of scrutiny in the next financial and compliance audit.
If I could, Representative, if I could go to Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly thank you for your presentation. So once the local sends in their audit, is your office responsible for reviewing, signing on, or disseminating those audit findings?
So it is the audit firm that sends it in to the Comptroller's office. We review it to make sure the normal protocol of audit has occurred, and then we post it on the Comptroller's website.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know we're talking about with Memphis Shelby County Schools a forensic audit. However, some of your normal yearly audits, other school districts have found significant findings. I'd like to specifically look at the Murray County Schools, 11 findings over multiple years, 4.6 million in budget imbalances, $371,014 in IRS penalties, 20+ million discrepancies in capital assets, 66 credit card charges without documentation. And I believe you yourself said management is either unwilling or unable to address the deficiency. What happens when you have a district like this? Because this seems like a pretty troubling audit finding, whereas regardless of what the process was with Memphis Shelby County Schools with Watkins Uberall, those audits were returned clean. I'm not saying that that was accurate. However, the public, as well as those in elected office, were led to believe those audits at the time were accurate. So when you have a situation like what happened in Murray County, what sort of corrective actions are taken? I mean, obviously, we have not seen a recommendation for takeover thus far. What happened in that particular district, or what will happen?
Well, again, as with any audit, we report the findings. I can't speak to the specifics of that one off the top of my head. I'll be glad to bring down my audit director and we can talk about that. I'm not familiar with it off the cuff, other than to say that obviously this audit and this situation with this school system, you don't have the extraordinary deficiency in learning outcomes demonstrated. I think it's everything coming together in regard to this project that's brought you all here today.
Thank you.
Senator Agberry.
Thank you. And thank you for that. I was simply just asking about the actual audit, though. So like Polk County Schools, their 2026 fiscal year 2025, 12 findings, 7 of 12 are repeat. 513 journal entries, 174 of them had to be corrected. Major control failures, a $250,000 loan not repaid, payment accounts and payroll accounts not reconciled, unidentified balances accumulated. From the Comptroller, it is concerning to see repeated findings and continued noncompliance with state law. Where is the intervention there? Again, Memphis Shelby County Schools did not have, and again, whatever failures in the system between Watkins Uberall and the state, Memphis and Shelby County Schools did not have these findings.
I will agree with you. Polk County is a very poorly run county. And I work to point that out every year and would love to see more intervention. The Comptroller's Office is a reporting agency, which is what we do with our audits. And so if the legislature would like to indicate some direction for Polk County, I'd actually be thrilled about that. But I don't think it can be used as an excuse to overlook what is an extraordinary deficiency of operation in the Memphis-Shelby County school system.
Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And last one, I'm not suggesting that Memphis-Shelby County Schools does not have significant back of house financial, human resources, and tech issues. I'm more so looking at the cure for the issue. So that's really kind of what I wanted to see, what happens with other school districts when they have these findings, and also trying to see what will happen differently so that you don't have an organization like Watkins Uberall that puts us in a position where we couldn't have intervened earlier with these serious fiscal issues. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Agberry. I have next Representative Sapicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so let's get back where we're supposed to be on this whole bill, on this whole proposal here. The Comptroller does audits either in-house or out-of-house every year on every district in the state of Tennessee. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just to say that the Comptroller's Office, with our Comptroller staff, we perform the audits of 91 out of 95 counties. What has always been called the Big Four, although I think we're really now in a situation where we have the Big 6 or 7 in Tennessee, but the Big Four have always, the counties have been audited through a contract firm. And when you get into situations like the Memphis-Shelby County school system, they've been contracted or audited through a contract with the CPA firm.
Representative Sapicki.
And so moving forward in the language of this proposal, it seems to me that an audit failure, the Comptroller's audit or any audit directed by the Comptroller, which would be one you outsource.
Yes.
In those audits, would the Comptroller or these organizations potentially find deficiencies in management, accounting, internal controls, fraud, waste, abuse, or financial record mismanagement? Those would all be things that they'd be looking for. Is that correct?
That is correct. And again, let me point out that each one of those contract audits is a three-party contract. The auditee, the auditor, and the Comptroller's Office are all party to that contract. The Comptroller's Office sets the scope of the audit, meaning what they're looking for, and the type things you enumerated is exactly what they're looking for, and that audit is reported to the Comptroller's Office.
Last one. And so moving forward, if this legislation does become law, the Comptroller is still going to provide its yearly audits on these districts, even whoever is managing them, correct, moving forward.
Yes.
And those reports will be disseminated back to the Comptroller to make reports back to the General Assembly on this specific bill on whether or not this board of directors is making progress or not, based off of one of the things is an audit that the Comptroller would do. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sapicki. I have Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you kind of mentioned this, Comptroller, just now and might have answered my question, but the bill before us outlines several criteria. We're really hammering home at one here, which is the audit. Now, based on what you just told us, what's been said of the audit is one criteria, and the list of schools that meet 3 out of the 4 that the DOE just gave us, I didn't hear Maury County or Polk County in the mix of that list when it comes to these other indicators: proficiency failure, failing schools, chronic absenteeism. So as you read this report, do you feel like the audit component is adequately balanced in the sea of other implications that are coming out of the school system and indices there?
All I can say right at this point in time is based on my understanding, I would say so, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, Mr. Comptroller. Appreciate you being here. You mentioned Watkins Uberall. Do they do a different kind of audit on Shelby County schools that, or let me ask it a better way. How do we? Well, I'm sure you would know. How do we determine what that auditing firm looked at, and what they looked at each year to determine that Memphis and Shelby County Schools was receiving a clean audit each year. And part of that question also is, when you reviewed that audit, was there anything that stood out as a red flag that would tell you that maybe Memphis and Shelby County Schools didn't deserve a clean audit? Or I don't understand how we go from clean for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years or so to let's do or perform a forensic audit, and then it's the worst that you've ever heard of in your life. And if you can help, I just want to reconcile that.
So thank you very much, and I think that's a good question. The two audit products are different audit products. A financial and compliance audit, which samples various financial operations of the district, is what has been performed by the contract auditor. This is a forensic audit specifically tasked to look for fraud, waste, and abuse that goes much deeper and much more intensely. I will say that in the course of the past several weeks, I have met with staff from Watkins Uberall. I have told them, just as I will tell you, that I would have expected in their basic work for some of these internal control deficiencies to pop up. For sure, they did not. And as the Memphis Shelby County school system looks for a new auditor in the next year, or if you pass this board as they're looking for a new auditor, I think that's something they need to look at when they choose their auditor. When the audit comes back, we do review the work papers of the auditor, but we do not redo the work. So if it appears that the methods used in coming up with the work papers were sound, that audit is published, and that's what's happened in this situation.
Thank you. And well, two questions. One is, how many LEAs have you performed a forensic audit on? And had Watkins Uberall's audits came back differently, based on what you're saying, that maybe they should have come back differently, or and should they have been looking for waste, fraud, and abuse when they did their audit? How do we reconcile the audits that that have come out on Polk and in Murray County, but there was no forensic audit ordered on either of those counties? I'm just trying to get my arms around this. So and here's the question: why was there no forensic audit ordered on Polk and Murray County? And can you order a forensic audit without the approval of the legislature?
Why were there? I can't speak to why there were. The legislature has not asked for those. It is my staff that has performed the audits of Polk and Murray counties. We could, I suppose, order a forensic audit outside of the direction of the legislature, but as you have seen in this case, they are much more labor intensive, which makes them very expensive. And so we are not likely to do that, barring an interest from the legislature.
Any other questions?
Just last question. So with that being said, have you ordered a forensic audit for both Polk and Murray County?
I can only speak to the time that I and my beloved predecessor have been comptroller. The Memphis Shelby County Schools are the only LEA that's received a forensic audit.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of Comptroller? Representative Sapicki.
Just a follow-up to that. The Comptroller's office, when they have findings, they publish those to the local governing boards, the county mayors or the county executive, and makes recommendations on how to solve these things. That all happens on a yearly basis, and then you come back to see what deficiencies they have either taken care of or they still have, and then you work with those counties or districts to continually affect change. Is that correct?
So that is correct. The normal protocol is the audit is performed. Again, the comptroller is a reporting agency. We report that audit. We publish it on our website. We report it back to the local government. Each county each county has an audit committee, which is charged with reviewing the audit. And there are several counties where we see deficiencies, where we note deficiencies, where we want them to be more proactive in fixing them.
And last one.
Representative Sapiki.
And I believe as a state representative, you send that state representative for that district a
Yes.
copy of the audit, so we know what the deficiencies there were.
Yes, when every county audit is released, the elected representative and senator for that county receive a copy of it in your email box.
And it'll be the same for this forensic audit for the members of the Shelby County School System.
We
correct?
can make sure that happens.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir.
All right, thank you, Representative Sapiki. Are there any other questions of Comptroller Mumpower? Are there any other questions of Department of Education or Ms. Washburn before we go back?
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Sapiki.
Thank you. Ms. Washburn, on number 6, where it talks about leadership instability, do you address in that death or retirement of a director?
The language of the proposed conference report just requires that the commissioner has determined that the local board has had 2 or more directors in the immediately preceding 4 years hired on an interim basis, and that has resulted in inconsistent district leadership and operational instability. So the commissioner would have to make the determination that those conditions exist.
Representative Sapiki.
And then on just in general here, I've been scanning the document, and I can't see how often the board meets. Is there anything in the document that tells us? Because if you have a contract over $50,000 and they're meeting once a month, that could potentially hold that contract up until they meet again. Are they able to meet whenever they deem necessary?
Yes, Casey Washburn, Office of Legal Services. There's no prescription in the language that directs how often or frequently the oversight board is to meet. They're tasked with the performance of the functions of the bill. So whatever that requires of them to do, they would establish their own meeting schedule and frequency with which they take up matters.
Perfect, thank you.
Just as a follow-up, and then I've got Senator Agberry. Ms. Washburn, I believe the conference report allows for the oversight board to create an executive committee, and they could meet remotely. Would that not satisfy the concern he raised?
Yes, there's the flexibility in the bill the conference report that would allow the oversight board of 9 members to appoint within its body an executive committee or a subcommittee that can take actions on behalf of the oversight board, and they can conduct those meetings, including full meetings of the board, electronically, or allow members to participate electronically as needed.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. Within the legislation or the proposed conference committee report, is there any criteria listed for selecting members for this takeover board?
Casey Washburn, Legal Services. The only criteria in the proposed Senate conference report is that they be residents of the county in which the LEA is located.
Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any criteria listed for removing members? I know it says that the appointing person can remove that individual, but I didn't see anything where it kind of gave any criteria for it. It just seems like they could wake up on a Tuesday and decide to remove someone based on how this is written.
Yes, that's correct. The members of the oversight board may be removed from the oversight board by their appointing authority, so by either the governor or one of the respective speakers at any time for any reason.
Thank you.
Senator Agberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last question. So within this proposed conference committee report, it also says that the appointed board will be paid at the same rate, compensated the same rate as the elected board. Is there any mechanism within the legislation to pay for those additional expenses? Because it would almost be like you're paying for 2 school boards.
The Yes, so the members of the oversight board, as well as staff that they may hire to assist the oversight board, will be compensated in the same manner as the Board of Education members are compensated or other staff of the LEA are compensated. So that could be out of the district funds. There's also the creation of the separate account, as I mentioned earlier, that they may petition the department and show good cause for why they should receive a disbursement from that fund to help them cover any costs associated with the operation of the oversight board in the district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while we're out of session, this is more so for fiscal. I really would like to see if there's a different recognition of these costs, even if you're not saying that it will go against the state budget, but at least kind of defining what this is going to look like if you're going to be paying an elected board and an appointed board and compensating them at the same rate, because it's not just a salary, it's also benefits. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Agberry. Are there any other questions of Ms. Washburn? All right, before we go back in sessions, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to ask Ms. Washburn this, but it may be better for fiscal. Can we have fiscal come up?
Is anyone from fiscal here? There's no one here from fiscal.
Okay. Maybe Ms. Legal can answer. In the proposed report, it speaks to compensation. So just piggybacking on what Senator Agberry was talking about. And can you read that language again in regards to, and how many people? I know there's 9 board members plus a staff of 3. Can you read that language again?
Yes. So on page 3, it says members of an oversight board must be compensated in the same manner as members of the LEA's local board of education are compensated. And then on page 4, where it allows the oversight board to hire staff to assist the oversight board, it says that staff members employed or reassigned to assist the oversight board must be compensated the same manner as other LEA employees are compensated. The oversight board doesn't necessarily have to hire staff members. They may decide to reassign someone who works currently in the LEA central office to assist the oversight board. So that's a discretionary decision. It doesn't necessarily have to be the hiring of new staff members.
And when we say compensation, so school board members receive their pay. I don't know if they receive any travel or per diem or anything like that, but they also receive benefits. And so when you think about pay and benefits, that's the same compensation that the school board members will receive. So health insurance, so on and so forth, this, that, and other. And so when we're saying we're going to pay these 9 board members plus 3 of their staff members, what 3 LEA staff members that's comparable to 3 LEA staff members, does that mean the pay and the benefits, because the words used in this document is compensation, and a compensation package is pay and all of the benefits that come with people that are in the same positions. So can you speak to that?
The language says that they'll be compensated in the same manner as the board or the employees. So to the extent that those employees or board members get benefits or additional part of a compensation package, whatever that is in the district would be something that those members or employees would be eligible to receive. Whether they would decline it or would receive it, that's a separate question.
And can you point to that cost outlined in the fiscal note of the either this proposed report or previous legislation? Because I think the same language was in the iterations of the previous.
I can try to pull the fiscal note up on the previous versions of the amendments from last year, but I don't have that before me right at this moment.
Okay, let me just do some napkin math real quick. If you got 9 members of the board, and let's say they're making $40,000 each, and let's say their insurance package is another $50,000, that's about $900,000. If you add 3 more members to it, 3 more staff members to that, let's say somebody that's in an executive secretary position or assistant position could possibly be $150,000 added to that, and then 2 assistants to them, another $75,000, $80,000. That seemed like a number that significant would be reflected in the fiscal note so that we can know how much this bill is going to cost us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Representative Parkinson. Any other questions of Ms. Washburn before we go back in session? Seeing none, we'll go back in session. Chairman White, you're recognized. Chairman Mark White, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Yeah, members, I just want to kind of bring us back to focus on this particular conference committee report. We've talked a lot about the fiduciary issues, the audit and things like that, but one of the reasons we are at this point in time is we're also interested in the accountability of academics. On the first page, it starts out, if a district is 50% or more deficient in math, 50% more deficient in English, 25% or more with the D and F letter grades. This is where this whole legislation originated from years ago. And across the state of Tennessee, we have 1 million students in our K through 12 schools across Tennessee. In this one district, we have 1 out of every 10 students serving are going to school. And when you have 25%, 26% proficiency year after year in math and reading scores, high chronic absenteeism is pointed out. That is also the purpose of this legislation. And as we started down this journey in 2025, and then we have continued over to 2026, the conference committee report from right now, I want to thank legal, because what they have done, and we worked on this for years, they've covered so much of the basis of what we are trying to address. And just to go over quick synopsis, the oversight board, you've got teacher accountability, class sizes, facility and maintenance. Board has a transformation plan, chronic absenteeism, academic outcomes, remediate deficiencies in financial management, budget oversight, contract oversight, restrictions, underused or served properties, dealing with charters, and also dealing with discretionary actions. It covers so many things that we can now come in and we can actually address issues, which covers everything from the accountability of academics to the budget oversight. And so I think, again, I want to thank the legal team, Ms. Casey Washburn and others who have worked on this tirelessly for the last number of months. Thank you. But I think what we have before us is a strong report that will put in place something so we can begin to help these 1 out of every 10 students that are in the education system in Tennessee. Thank you, Senator.
All right. Thank you, Representative White. Senator Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly thank you so much, Chairman White, for those remarks. I think that kind of highlights, though, particularly that 80% of our LEAs have students who have proficiency failure, and 50% of our LEAs have failing schools. It really highlights that this legislation was written very surgically so that it only applied to Memphis and Shelby County schools. When you combine the audit findings, which we talked about, as well as leadership turnover. And I would urge my colleagues, Memphis Shelby County Schools is but one school district in this state. And yes, it needs some level of intervention. I certainly don't think it needs to go as far as a complete takeover, which is what is being proposed. But there are other school districts. 80% of school districts have 50% proficiency or less. That's something we need to pay attention to. 25% of the LEAs have a D or F. That's 50% of our LEAs. So that's something we need to pay attention to. I have said, especially after reviewing the initial report from the Comptroller's office, that there does need to be some level of intervention in the back of house. There needs to be experts that come in and completely restructure the financial systems, the human resources systems, and the technology and IT systems. But I think that this is just a little too heavy-handed when you talk about completely really removing local control in a meaningful way. There is no ability for the voter to have any sort of, or the constituent, the parent, the family, to have any sort of recourse, because what is proposed are people being appointed by members of the state legislature who do not reside in that county, and by the governor. And so there is no, required number of meetings like you have with a school board. There is no sort of accountability. And also to have a 4-year term of sorts without any sort of opportunity for an early exit if there's progress, to me, is just, really it's using resources that are unnecessary. So, I mean, obviously, Representative Parkinson and I plan to submit a minority report. But I'll just say this should be a collaborative effort. And when you talk about putting in a non-elected board that has such extreme levels of authority, it becomes more of a we're telling you what to do as opposed to let's work together and see what can happen. And I represent Memphis and Shelby County, Representative Parkinson does, as well as Senator Taylor, Chairman White. And so I think we all are aware that there are unique challenges, especially when you look at the demographics deeply steeped in poverty. But let's not confuse that with what needs to happen at the school system, at the school district, as opposed to what's happening in the classrooms. And let's also not, we need to tell, the children in Memphis and Shelby County, while your achievement is not where we want it to be, your growth is actually much higher than most districts across this state. And that's something we need to focus on. And the last thing I'll say is we were very deliberative when we came up with the school turnaround model. And to not even allow that to have an opportunity to work, to me, really is a travesty and to a certain degree a waste of resources. I'm hoping that the 7 LEAs that hit 3 of the 4 performance metrics, we're not talking about the 2, number 5 and 6, which were clearly crafted just to make sure you ensnared only Memphis and Shelby County schools, but Campbell and Koch and Lewis and Madison and the ASD and the Public Charter Commission. I hope that we come back next year and we really do some meaningful things to intervene for them. Because as a House member used to say when I was a House member, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. And if this is what's good for Memphis Shelby County schools, surely it's good for our other students who are in LEAs that have repeat audit findings, have significant proficiency, failing schools, and lack the resources needed to pull themselves out of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Agberry. Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, just to reiterate, of the 6, how many do Memphis Shelby County check those boxes of the 6?
It's my understanding, and Chairman White can correct me, I believe Memphis Shelby County Schools meet all 6 criteria.
So if we set the threshold at 6, we'd still have 1 school as opposed to 4, even if that. So, okay, thank you for the clarity.
All right. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're all on the same page too, that
She was telling me you're doing a great job, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you. She tells me that all the time also. Mr. Chair, and I think we all agree that, there's some interventions that may be necessary, but we have those laws on the books now for those interventions to happen. To say that Memphis and Shelby County schools meet 6 out of the 6 in criteria. I mean, 2 of them obviously were specifically, tied to, only Memphis and Shelby County schools. And let me put this in context. I mean, the audit criteria was added after the audit was started, and it's not even completed. The audit is not even finished. But in the previous iteration of the legislation, which we are here to try to merge the 2, there was nothing said about an audit in the original legislations, either in the House or the Senate. And so to add the audit to as one of the criteria after the fact is suspect, to say the least. And then to say that Memphis and Shelby County meets 6 of 6, well, that's 1 of the 6. Nobody else is going to meet that because nobody else in the history of histories has had a forensic audit performed on them. And some obviously deserved to have a forensic audit performed on them. Now, the other one is one of them also about is the county commission deal still in there?
No.
No, that's how. And so there was another one in there that was specifically tied to Memphis and Shelby County schools, which would exclude the other schools. So now if you remove those two that are specifically to target Memphis and Shelby County schools, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, what does Memphis and Shelby County School mean now? Let's say they meet 404. But my question is, who came up with what that number is to qualify a district? Was it arbitrarily pulled out of the air, or was it specifically to pull in only Memphis and Shelby County schools? And I guess that's a question for the authors.
Well, I will speak for myself, then I'll ask Representative White. Look, if we wanted to target Shelby County, there's a number of ways we could have done that. We could have done population based. We could have done it based on the fact that it's a charter county. We could have had it only apply to charter counties. We could have done a population threshold. We didn't, even though there's been a lot of discussion about Shelby County and the fact that only 25% of the kids that are graduating can read at grade level. The fact that may have brought this issue to my attention or Representative White's attention, we have an obligation to look at the entire state and what other school districts are there out there that perhaps need some type of intervention or may need some intervention. And that's why we developed this criteria. And you know, as writing legislation, the authors, they put what's in the bill, and this is what Representative White and I came up with in terms of what the criteria would be. Not so it would fit Shelby County. We could have done that with fewer criteria, but to ensure that other schools that may be teetering on disaster like Memphis Shelby County schools, that they will have an opportunity to have a local intervention as well. And Representative White, I'll allow you to answer the question as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we can talk. I'd be glad to work with anybody in the future on other districts, but we're not talking about other districts right now. We are specifically focused on this, and this is what was before us. And personally, being an education chair for 12 years, I'm very concerned about accountability across state. We work on this in education all the time. But today we have for us, we can't say, well, because everybody else is maybe deficient, we don't need to do this on this particular deficiency. This is a process we've been working on, as I mentioned, for 2 years, and this is what's before us now. And I think it's a good move that we can get in and address deficiencies that have been going on. I've been in this district, Memphis, for 60 years, and I really are concerned about our community because of addressing workforce and everything else that a K through 12 education does. So we're focused on this, not what the rest of the state is doing, and we're always doing strong accountability measures for everyone else, and we'll continue to do that.
Again, to answer your question, whether it was 3 or 4, I mean, Representative White and I, we've been working on this for 2 years, and we determined that there were that we would come up with this 4 out of 6 would be the threshold that would authorize the state to create this local intervention we're looking to do. Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarity, and I know that there's a lot of history between everyone who represents Shelby County. The bill before us is a bill for the state of Tennessee, and I'm from the complete other side of the state. So I'm asking myself here, as a representative of my district on the other side of the state, do I fundamentally agree that all 6 of these items are points of concern? And the answer is yes. So there's the first thing. I fundamentally agree. All points of these are items of concern. Then I have to ask myself, well, what's a threshold where it would be appropriate to intervene? What's a threshold where you could reasonably say that management is responsible for something systemic? That's what I think we're trying to work out. So to answer the question of who determines, well, the legislature ultimately determines. This committee will determine what goes back before us. We'll vote on it. We'll decide if it's palatable. And that's what we move forward with policy in Tennessee. But from the complete other side of the state, these 6 things I fundamentally agree with are problems. I don't know of any educator that would want this in their system at all, want these outcomes. Or they wouldn't want audit failures. They wouldn't want instability in leadership. They wouldn't want chronic absenteeism. So I'm comfortable knowing that even though this probably touches Memphis and Shelby right now, should it touch a system in my district in East Tennessee, that we would have some sort of resolution to interfere with that systemic failure. So I think to kind of come back to the purpose of what's before us. I get that there's history and I get that there's some feelings that Memphis Shelby's been picked on a little bit here, but what's before this committee right now is, have we come up with a compromise that we can take back to both bodies that says this is how we're going to behave in the state of Tennessee when something like this comes up? Sure, Memphis Shelby may have been the bellwether for us to be concerned. And it was evidently concerning enough to where legislation was brought to say we need something better in place. So I hope we can kind of move forward with that as we bring this to a vote in this committee.
All right, thank you, Senator Lowe. Representative Sapiki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague's statement. I think the thing we're missing here, and first of all, this applies to any district. And if you're a member of the General Assembly and your district falls under these criteria, you need to be having a serious conversation with your county commissions and your own LEA about what are you doing. I think the thing that's kind of absurd is we're okay with 50% of our kids not on grade level. It's in the language. We're not going to look at you unless more than 50% of your kids are not on grade level. What are we doing? Our own accountability measures with the State Board of Education is based off of 70% on grade level. We're okay with 25 or less % of your schools being priority schools? Think about that. 25% or less of your schools, if you have less than that, you don't even qualify as a DRF. I appreciate the language of trying to set a bar. If we're ever going to get to great in Tennessee, we have to have a very high bar. This is the first step to look at. This is encompassing districts, whoever they are across the state of Tennessee, that you're not doing what's right for your kids. And I think at the state level, when it reaches this criteria, we have an obligation to step in to correct something and get it on the right path. Hopefully, it's 4 years, it goes back to the district, and we never have to have this conversation again with that district ever again. But this bill applies to everybody. And everybody in the state of Tennessee should be looking at this going, we have to up our game. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Representative Sapiki. If I'm going to call on Chairman Mark White for a motion, and we'll have discussion of any potential amendments.
Thank you, Chairman. At this point in time, I'd like to make a motion on the conference committee report before us, a motion to the committee to adopt.
All right, there's a motion to adopt the conference report. It's been properly moved and seconded, so we have the conference report before us. I did have a question, and we may, if I could go out of session for Ms. Washburn, if I could go out of session. Ms. Washburn, I had a couple of clarifications I want to make sure were in the conference report, and if they weren't, if we could add those. One was to specify that the oversight board can contract for the assessment and the turnaround plan. As you recall in there, it says that the board has to do a needs assessment, annual needs assessment, and a transformation plan. Do we need to specify that that function could be contracted out instead of them doing it themselves?
Yes, Senator Taylor, I believe so. It currently makes that the obligation of the oversight board. So if there's an intent for that to be the oversight board to select an outside entity to perform those functions on behalf of the board, that would need to be addressed in the legislation.
If I could, I would move that we include that in the conference report just to provide clarity on that. And is there a second? All right, been properly moved and seconded. Well, we're out of session, so we'll have to come back in session and do that. Yeah. Parkinson, Representative Parkinson was telling me that. Let me ask the other two, and then we'll go back in session. The oversight board, I think there needs to be clarity that oversight board can create policies and timeline requirements for the submission of contracts to them from the local board. I know in the conference report, it states that the oversight board would be able to provide policies and procedures and timeline for submitting the annual budget. And I think it's important that they have the authority to also set those same type of parameters in terms of a contract. And so I'll be making a motion on that when we go back in session, unless it's already covered, Ms. Washburn. And then the last is, I think we should provide clarity on the appointment of the chair of the oversight board. Does that need clarity, you think, Ms. Washburn?
Senator Taylor, there's no language in the proposed conference report that addresses the appointment or selection of a chair.
All right. If we could, we'll go back in session. Then what I would move is that an amendment that would include all three of these things. One, to specify the oversight board can contract for the needs assessment and the turnaround plan, that the oversight board would also be able to create policies and timeline requirements for the submission of contracts, very similar to that of the budget. And then last, that we could provide language for the appointment of a chair of the oversight board. I would make that in way of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. If we could, any discussion on that?
I do have a parliamentary question.
All right, parliamentary question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did a lot just in, Chairman White had a motion on the floor that was seconded. And then we kind of went out of session and kind of didn't. And you're
right.
motioning for amendment. So maybe we need to get Chairman White to withdraw his motion first.
Well, no, thank you for bringing that up. You're right. We need to vote on the conference report before we amend it. So
Wait a minute, Mr. Chairman. Let me read, if you don't mind.
Okay.
If we vote on the conference report, it's going to be either voted up or down as it is without your amendments.
That's correct.
And so we maybe need to get your amendments done first.
No, sir.
No? Oh,
No, so we,
okay.
just like a bill, we have to get the main motion on the floor before we can amend it. All right. We've got the motion. We have not voted on it, so we don't need. Okay. All right. So then we're in proper order. We're in proper order where we are now. The main motion has been made. Now we can amend it.
Well, I do have a question. I'm sorry. And I just want to make sure I'm on the same page with you. Are we going to vote on amendments that we don't see? Or tell me what we're doing, because I would like to see the amendments before we vote on. I might vote with you.
What we're doing, I'm calling an amendment. It's really more of a change to the conference report. We're adding this to the conference report. That's what we're doing.
But these are not technical changes. These are substantive changes. Am I correct?
Right. I don't think they're substantial, but bid up the committee. You can vote no if you think it's substantial.
Okay.
All right. We're going to vote on the amendment, and I'll go over it one more time. It does three things: specifies the oversight board can contract for the assessment and the turnaround plan, that the oversight board can create policies and timeline requirements for the submission of contracts from the local board, the elected board, to the board of managers. And then third, that we include language on the appointment of a chair for the oversight board. That's the amendment's been properly moved and seconded. I'm going to call the vote first of the Senate members. Senators, all those in favor of that amendment to the conference report indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Opinion of the chair. The Senate adopts that. Representative White.
Am I in order? Could I ask a question? If we, once we vote on this, does this close it out? Or we have any other amendments?
No, we have another. We have other amendments.
Okay.
All right. On House members, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opinion of the chair, the House ayes have it. So that amendment is agreed to. Representative White.
Thank you, members. And as I mentioned before, I really want to praise legal. They have brought together a beautiful Commerce Committee report for us. There's one other thing I would like to bring to the Commerce Committee's attention for you to consider. It was brought to my attention, okay, look on item number 2, page number 2, where it says an oversight at the bottom. An oversight board consists of the following 9 members, 5 by the governor, 2 by the Speaker of the House, 2 by the Senate. I would like to make a motion that on the part where it says 2 members appointed by the Speaker of the House, we have for the past year been looking at highly qualified people to be on this board. And what the motion I want to make for an amendment would to allow the Speaker of the House to appoint one member of his two that may be outside the county of the LEA in question, should the Speaker think that we are missing a specific need that the board needs, and to reserve that option for that one member on the board that will be appointed by the Speaker of the House. Is that clear? Did I make myself clear on that?
Yes. I believe so, and I will second that motion. So the motion on the floor now is that one of the appointments of the Speaker of the House would be, could be someone from outside the county of the LEA. Senator Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative White, I just want to make sure that this one person would have to reside in the state of Tennessee.
That is correct. It would just be outside the LEA in question. And it's brought to our attention, we want the best qualified. And if we see a deficiency of an area, not of the members being appointed, but a deficiency in an area that we really want to address, we're putting highly qualified people in facilities and accounting and maintenance and academics. And in case there is a deficiency, to allow that one member to be appointed by the Speaker that we may see that would fulfill that deficiency.
I think that would be noteworthy and a great idea, honestly, but I just wanted to make sure that they were from the state of Tennessee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Senator Powers. Senator Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I strongly speak in
Speaker.
opposition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, there you go.
And I speak, one day maybe, I don't know.
No.
I speak in strong opposition to this amendment. I think that it is highly inappropriate to have someone outside of the LEA for any, if this, as this legislation has been positioned as something that should apply to all LEAs. And so to have this one particular board member could be appointed from outside of that LEA, to me, it seems like it's being written for a specific person. And if this newly constituted board believes that they need an additional expert, surely they can hire said individual as they have been given the power to contract and hire. If you are really talking about something that is representative of the people that they are serving, just like the elected board, it is my opinion that they should only come from that LEA. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ackberry. Representative Spicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with my colleague, Senator Powers, about must be a resident of the state of Tennessee. But I want to clarify, because there were two things said there. Is this outside the county or outside the LEA? Because those are two different things.
Representative White.
They may reside outside the county of the LEA in question.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no further debate on that, we'll move to a vote on this amendment. I will begin this time with the House. House members indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, despite that robust no. We'll vote now in the Senate. Senators, all those in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. No. And a very robust no from Senator Ackberry. Any other questions?
I do have a question.
I was afraid so. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm enjoying this opportunity to sit next to you, Mr. Chairman. What is needed to propose an amendment to the conference committee? I just want to make sure I'm within the rules.
Sure. You can make the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thought you'd never ask. I would like to make a motion that we create a structure for Memphis and Shelby County schools like that has been done in Hamilton County schools in regards to having an advisory board that assists Hamilton County schools in the writing of their ship. And but we tailor this version of it specifically to Memphis and Shelby County schools and give Memphis and Shelby County schools the same latitude that we gave Hamilton County schools when we put an advisory board and community advisors together for them.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any questions on that? Representative White.
Thank you. And I would like to speak in opposition to that amendment. We have worked on this diligently for 2 years. And you can, one thing I've learned, you never say may when you should say shall. We had a bill committee the other day where for 13 years, there's been a certain, well, I won't get into specifics on that. We've already passed the bill. But there was a may, and so we continue to let these systems operate because we don't ever do anything about it. So I think we're at the point in time we need to move forward with the language before us, and so I would vote no on that amendment suggestion.
All right, any other questions on the amendment? We'll begin vote this time on the Senate side. All those senators in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye. Opposed? No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. That item fails in the Senate. We'll go ahead and vote just for the House as well. House members indicate, if you support the amendment, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. That item fails. We're back on the main motion as amended. I'm sorry. Senator Hackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly I'm going to get in the amendment game as well, but mine will be very specific. Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the legislation before us so that there is an exit plan for school system if they meet the criteria that has been established within the legislation, that there will not be a blanket 4+2 extension, but instead will, if they meet the criteria that is defined within this legislation, they will be able to exit oversight.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Sapiki.
Yes, Senator Hackberry, can you expand on that at all? I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your intentions with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly, Chairman Sapiki, my intentions are that if the district is doing, if the board, the appointed board is doing what we're asking them to do, the district is in a good place, then it should not continue to have those additional resources. Instead, it should go back to an elected board, right? Because, you know, mission accomplished, basically. Like, I want to actually make it based on if these metrics are met, as opposed to saying, we'll do 4 years and, you know, that's it. So that's why I just feel like if the metrics are met for the reason for oversight to make such a drastic move, then if those metrics are met, there should no longer be oversight. It should be a transition to the elected school board.
All right, thank you. Representative White.
Thank you. I do believe that the language in the bill is pretty specific that if the 4 years, they can move right off of it if they've meet all the guidelines in this thing. So I think that we already have specific language in this bill, 4 years.
Senator Hackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly thank you, Chairman White. No, I'm saying if they meet the criteria in 3 years, then they would be able to exit oversight. I understand that as the legislation is written, it's 4 years. If the criteria is not met, that initial appointed advisory board will be dismantled. A new board will be put in place for an additional 2 years to see if those metrics are being met. What I'm suggesting is that we have a pathway for an early exit if the oversight metrics are met, so that we don't continue to have that heavy hand over the school system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments on the amendment, we'll begin with the House. All House members in favor of Senator Hackberry's amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. In the Senate, senators in favor of Senator Hackberry's amendment indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. That item, that amendment fails. We're back on the conference report as amended. Any other questions?
I do have one more amendment.
One more amendment from Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is my last amendment. This amendment is being offered in order to help the state and Memphis and Shelby County schools not take money out of education because they have to fight litigation. What this amendment proposes is that we remove the criterias number 5 and 6 that specifically target Memphis and Shelby County schools only, and that we change the threshold to 3 out of 4 of the remaining criteria. That would make it truly statewide application, help us to avoid any litigation and any delays because we are tied up in the courts. And with that, Mr. Chair, I move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. I am absolutely thrilled that you're concerned about the implementation of this. So
I am.
there is a motion and a second. Any questions on the amendment? Representative White.
I would just like to speak in opposition. I think we got a good, clean conference committee report, and I'm going to vote no.
All right, thank you. Seeing no others, we'll begin with the Senate this time. Senators that are in favor of Representative Parkinson's amendment indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. In the House, all of those in favor of Representative Parkinson's amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. That amendment fails. We're back on the conference report as amended. Seeing no further comments, we will move to a roll call vote, beginning this time with the House of Representatives. Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
Representative Sapicki. Sapicki votes aye. Representative Moody. Aye. Moody votes aye. Representative Parkinson.
No.
Parkinson votes no. Representative Slater.
Aye.
Slater votes aye. Representative White.
Aye.
White votes aye. Mr. Chair, you have 4 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, the House members agree to the conference report. If we could, Madam Clerk of the Senate, if you would call the roll.
Senator Taylor.
Aye.
Senator Taylor votes aye. Senator White. Aye. Senator White votes aye. Senator Powers.
Aye.
Senator Powers votes aye. Senator Agberry.
No.
Senator Agberry votes no. Senator Lowe.
Aye.
Senator Lowe votes aye. You have 5 ayes and 1 no.
All right, the Senate agrees to the conference report. Seeing no further business before the conference committee, we stand adjourned.